morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here today to talk about a subject I'm really passionate about, social media, and how it can help you grow your business. And today I very much want to hone in on the business context, because when you look out there, what you see is that there are currently nearly 2 billion people around the world using social media, but there's a little bit of a gap when we get down to the professional and the business model. So that's going to be what I talk about today. And how I'm going to do it is first to talk about social media at more of a macro level. I'm going to look at some of the problems facing SMEs and then really hone in on some of the solutions for you guys who I know are very time pressured, but to assure you that there is a way that you can integrate social media into your business that is both practical and useful for you. So I want to start with the problem. And the problem is this. As I've said, right now we've got nearly 2 billion people in the world using social media. And social media digital is still growing at double-digit rates. So by 2017, we expect it to be close to 2.55 billion. What the problem is when you start to look down at the business level, and in particular down at the senior executive level, the participation rates are really low. When you look at CEOs, for example, depending on what survey you look at, anything between 15 and 30% of CEOs are using social media, and that doesn't actually mean because they're using it well. Many have just signed up on a platform like LinkedIn, but they're not doing anything there, which is a little bit like going to a networking event and standing in the corner. So you've actually got to do something once you get on the platforms. So why do we have this problem? This is what I want to talk about today. I think there are a number of reasons. One of the key reasons is that people are still wedded to myths of social media that have nothing to do with the reality, and we need to bust those myths. We need to dispel them in order for people to get into the right mindset and move forward. Second problem is overwhelm. As Mike said, we're all so busy. It's hard for people even to get a half a day away from their business to work on the business. And there's so many choices in social media. How do we narrow them down, use them in a way that's effective for us? That's all what I'm going to cover. Oops. And that's me. All right, so Boston Consulting says social media will be worth 4.2 trillion by 2016. We've got a number of studies that have come out showing that digital and social media can give you a competitive advantage. And yet, as I've said, we've got leaders and businesses missing in action. Why is this? I think in the first instance that there are some key myths that businesses have about social media, which are not borne out by the data, and that we need to dispel. The first myth, and I hear this all the time, is that social media is a fad. And whenever I'm talking to executives, there's this reluctance to invest because social media is going to be here today and gone tomorrow. Well, this is absolutely not borne out by the data. When you look at a professional networking platform like LinkedIn, LinkedIn currently has 300 million members, professional members around the world. It's in 200 countries and available in 20 languages. And LinkedIn was actually born in 2003. So it's nearly 12 years old. And as professionals have continued to use LinkedIn, it's become more and more sophisticated in response to their needs. We look at something like Facebook, and people think about Facebook and they think about their kids. They think about Facebook and they think about, that young college kid, Mark Zuckerberg. But that young college kid is now 30 years old, and he's a billionaire, and he's heading a listed company with 6,000 staff. And yet we're very much anchored to this idea of Facebook as something sort of geeky, something, in the sort of the college kid narrative. And it's moved on from there. Even when you look at some of the relative newcomers like Twitter, which is a microblog, Twitter was formed in 2006 and now has 500 million tweets a day. So social media is not a fad. There are more and more platforms emerging all the time. That's part of the overwhelm for people. But interestingly, the platforms, as we learn to use them and they learn about us, are one, becoming more sophisticated, helping us manage our own governance back end and responding to our more immediate business needs. So social media is here to stay, and it's only going to get more and more important as we become increasingly digital in our world, which we absolutely are going to do. The second myth about social media is that that's where you go to post photos of what you ate for lunch. And it's no surprise that people think this, because if you go and have a look at social media, you're going to see hundreds of photos of hamburgers and chips and shoes and chocolate if you ever go to my tweet stream. And so it's no surprise that we have this idea that that's how people are using social media. But I want to put it in context for you, and a context that will make sense to you as professionals and as business owners. Now, if you think about, like, we might all be here today, having a talk, seeing seminars, learning, and then we have a break in half an hour's time for coffee. And I might turn to one of you, might turn to Mike and say, oh, you know, I love these little lemon meringue pies, they're really delicious. You know, absolutely human, absolutely appropriate, absolutely within context, but it's not what today is about. The big difference is that when you capture one of those moments in social media, it's there forever. It's searchable and it exists forever on your tweet stream. Whereas when we have one of those little moments like at a coffee break, it just dissipates into thin air. So the context is the same. What you're seeing here is not what the platforms are about. It's about who we are when we use social media, which is human beings connecting with each other, connecting with our customers, connecting with people who can help us. So social media is about human connection, human moments. The third myth about social media is that it's for young people. And again, this is absolutely not borne out by the data. When you look at who's coming online around the world, then you've actually got 8 people a second coming on board, either through mobile or social media networks, 8 people every second. So clearly those people aren't all 18 and under. And again, that's growing. And as we become more and more mobile as a world, a lot of those people are coming on via their mobile. When you look at some of the studies that come out at the end of every year, I was reading all the studies that came out at the end of 2013 about platform growth and which demographics were growing the fastest. And in almost all of the platforms, it's around the 55 up age group that are really starting to be the biggest business growth within those platforms. The reason is that obviously we're becoming more confident with technology, more savvy, but we also know that something's going on here, and a lot of people are starting to hop on board and take advantage of that. When you look at Twitter, it's around 50 to 60, similar on Facebook, similar on Google+, which is another one of the social media platforms. You've probably heard that as a result, some teenagers are leaving platforms like Facebook. You know, who wants to be on Facebook when your granny's there or your mum? They're just going to follow what you're doing. Now, the figures on the Facebook exodus have been quite overstated because we still see a lot of teens are on Facebook, but they're just using it a little bit differently to what they did before. But what's happening, and this is the really important insight, is when people gravitate away from a platform like Facebook to Snapchat, which is where a lot of the teens went, it's not because they're leaving social media. It's because they're finding the right social media platform for them. Much like I might have an iPhone and you might have a BlackBerry, it's about personal preferences. So social media is the given. It's the starting point. It's what social platform is right for you. And that's as much a strategic business question as it is about a personal preference for the way you want to socialize. All right, the next myth about social media is that it's for code monkeys. And again, I think this is one of the reasons why so many business owners have avoided social media, because there's a bit of a fear around the technology. And it's really interesting. There was a great IBM report that came out in 2012 where they'd interviewed thousands of senior executives around the world about this lag in adopting social media. And one of the things that came through time and time again is that professionals were saying, you know, we feel that we're a whole internet generation behind the young people who are coming into our businesses, and we feel out of touch, or we feel afraid of the technology. Now, there's no need for that, because you don't need to know, for example, how to code any more than you need to know how to build an electronic circuit board because you watch TV. The TV is there for you to do what you want with, and the channels are the same. They're about, as I mentioned earlier, the relationships we form, the strategic and random relationships that we form that can help us position our businesses. So social media platforms, yes, there's a little bit to learn, but it's very easy, and professionals are highly skilled, business owners are highly skilled. We are always growing, we've always adapted. We learned how to use mobiles, we learned how to use computers. This is no different. So not to be either overwhelmed or put off by the technological side of social media. The fifth myth about social media is that it is only for marketing. Now, social media is really, really important for marketing, because what happens in social media is that people are having conversations with one another, and those conversations matter, and they translate into behaviors, they translate into actions. But it's much broader than marketing. You can, for example, use social media to do a lot of your research. You can use social media for professional development. Right now, you can go online and find literally around 800 courses from prestigious universities around the world on what are called the MOOCs, the Massive Open Online courses. And you can do any of these for free. From Harvard, from Stanford, you could learn Greek, calculus, quantum physics, whatever rocks your boat. So social media is much deeper than marketing. And this is, I think, something really critical that businesses are going to need to understand. Because in the old days, if you had a customer complaint or a customer touch point, you could, for example, say, well, call our customer call center, and they're going to sort out your customer complaint. But now your customers can come to you through just so many different touch points. They can come in via the call center. They can comment in a comment box at the end of an advertising campaign. They can come to you via some B2B channel you've never even heard of. So businesses need to be ready to respond to those customers wherever we find them on the platforms. And marketing, as I say, it is critical, but social media is deeper than marketing. And the last one, and I hear this all the time, and it'll probably ring true for a lot of people here, is that whenever you mention social media, people say, what's the ROI? What is the return on investment? If I'm going to put resources into this, I need that number. I need to know what it is. Now, there's good news and bad news in this particular space. The good news is that it's important to ask and request business rigor. I love that came through in Mike's presentation. We need to be able to look at the numbers to make informed decisions, informed strategic decisions. So I think it's a valid question, and professionals should be asking this question and should demanding that they see some sort of an ROI. We also now, in a world of big data, there are more analytics than you can poke a stick at. So if you're going to put out a campaign, you can track with absolute precision who responded to that campaign, where they went. Even if they don't want to buy your shoes right now, will they buy them in 3 months' time? You can capture those sorts of engagements at the point of sale and make sense of them. The more difficult part of that, and this is more of the bad news, I guess, is that there's still parts of that social media cycle that are hard to quantify. This has always been the case for marketing when you talk about things like brand visibility or the relationships that you form through your various communications campaign. I love what Einstein had to say there. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. Because how do you measure the value of a relationship? And how do you measure the value of trust and loyalty that comes from the long game of social and is about forming those relationships? I think too that there's very strong evidence that these relationships that we form in social networks matter, because that's a question for businesses too. Yes, I can go and connect with people and get along with them, but does this matter? One of the things we found, if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer, which measures trust year on year around the world in different industries and across different sectors, is that trust has been on the decline. We've become less trusting, for example, of governments, of politicians, of CEOs. But at the same time, when you look at where is trust very high, trust is very high on a peer-to-peer level. So, we're here today. If I asked Cara, where should I go for coffee before, the presentation starts, I'm going to trust her advice on where to go 10 times more than any amount of direct marketing or advertising I got about where to go for coffee in Federation Square. And what happens, and this is part of the initial problem with social, is initially we just went out in social to chat. So we weren't collecting data because it's where people were connecting socially. But if you think about it, conversations underpin just about everything that happens in human life. If I see a movie, I'm going to either persuade you or dissuade you from going to see that through a conversation. If I have a great brand experience, I'm going to say to you, try those jeans, they're fabulous. If I have a bad brand experience, I'm going to say that in those networks as well. So what's going on in those networks really, really matter, and you need to be a part of it. So what's the problem? As I said, we're all smart people. Why is there this gap? We know something's going on in social. We know it's important. Why are we lagging? I think part of the problem here has been the way that people like myself, who are passionate about social media, have talked about social media in the past. So typically you got something go wild online, cute cat video, and people would run up, and the head of marketing would run up to the CEO and say, wow, did you see that cute cat video that went viral? It got, 100 million hits. And the CEO would be thinking, who cares? Show me the ROI. Fair reaction. Why do these things matter unless we can bring them back to our business bottom line? So I think we've been using the wrong language. We've been talking about social in ways that business people can't understand and use in practical terms to make business-driven decisions. So I just quickly want to touch on the business case for social media, for digital more broadly, just so that you know it's there. All these reports that I'm referring to, you can get online or through Cara. I can send links. So I'm just going to go scantily through the detail, but just so that you're aware of it. IDC basically said that by 2013, the digital economy, the e-commerce economy would be worth 16 trillion. The problem with stats, as we all know, is it's going to depend on your definitions and where you go to find these numbers. So you're going to find these vary. So I don't want to get caught up in the actual precision of the numbers, but I want to say it's huge. That e-commerce cycle is huge. It's getting bigger. It's growing at double-digit rates. And importantly, as Boston Consulting Global said in their report on the internet economy, that digital economy would be worth 4.2 trillion for the G20 nations by 2016. When you dig into that Boston report, what's really interesting are more of the case studies that they focus on. And in a nutshell, what they show is that those companies which are online and engaging are outperforming those who aren't. Conservatively 3 times. Numbers vary. There have been some great reports from Capgemini and McKinsey this year which say that those digitally mature businesses, so social's a part of digital, it's not digital in its entirety, are outperforming their competitors by as much as 26%. So huge competitive advantage. And Boston says that, again, by 2016, digital will contribute 5.5% to the GDP of those G20 nations. When you look at the UK, last year I think it was around 8%, and when you look in Australia, it's currently 3.7%. And I think this is a really important question for Australian businesses, because if you think about it, we know we've got a 2-speed economy, we know that we've had a commodities boom, and we know that that commodities boom is ending. So as a business leader, we need to be thinking about what's next. How do we remain competitive, and how do we compete in this massive digital tsunami which is sweeping the world? And that is about being there, developing a digital footprint, and being a part of it. Very quickly, again as business owners, just to understand that you can't not be there. Something I hear a lot when I'm talking in particular to C-suite executives is, look, I don't want to go on social media because what if somebody says something bad about me? Well, they already are. And if you ever want to know how you're perceived as a company, just go online and Google yourself. So these conversations are already happening, and you're not going to respond to all of them. You're certainly not going to respond to malicious conversations, but they're already happening, so you might as well be there. Not just dispelling negative information, but also telling your own narrative as a company, where you, for the first time in history sometimes, have been able to go straight to your customers and tell your story to them directly. There are also some legal reasons why you can't not be there. One is crisis. If an online crisis emerges and your company was the target of that, how are you going to respond to that crisis unless you already have those channels set up? We've had there's a lot of spoofing online, and this is one of my favourite spoof accounts. It's by it's the Queen UK satire account, and it's very, very funny. In April this year, she put out a little tweet which said, "I'm abdicating," and 5 minutes later, just April's Fool, Charles. Very funny. And Twitter recognises this. This is from Twitter. And so there are online rules about how you manage satires and spoofs. Now, and these ones are fun, but they can be malicious. For example, when we had our own leadership crisis in Victoria, where Baillieu was replaced by Napthine, somebody set up a fake Dennis Napthine MP account, and during the middle of the leadership crisis put out a tweet which basically said, "At least I don't have big shoes to fill." The last thing that a political party in the middle of a crisis needed, and something that can be managed by making sure that even if you're still a little bit shy of social, that at the very least you go onto all the platforms, snap up your URLs, your web addresses, your Twitter handles, so that when you're ready to go out there and use social strategically, you can do that. And if there's a crisis, you can mobilize where the crisis occurs. Because one of the important things to note is that if you are spoofed maliciously on Twitter or Facebook, one of the ways that you get Facebook or Twitter to intervene is by actually reporting it to them, and to report it to them, you actually have to have an account. So there's almost no point in not having those, even if you're going to keep them dark for a while. And of course, the other reason why you need to be in social, even if you don't want to be, is because your people are there. This is the tweet stream from HMV in the UK, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. They decided to restructure, and unfortunately for them, they restructured the social media team who had the passwords to the account. And I love this first tweet here. Just overheard our marketing director. He's saying, folks, ask, how do I shut down Twitter? Is it important for the head of marketing to understand how the social media platforms work and affect your reputation? Absolutely. And we've moved on since then. But again, just to convey to you as businesses, even if you're shy, they're still being used. They can still be used both for and against you. So make sure you secure your digital assets. There's also a massive, massive market impact of social media platforms. This is something that happened in the US in 2013. What happened was the Twitter account of Associated Press was hacked, and somebody put up a fake tweet essentially saying that there'd been a bomb at the White House. Now, AP is very savvy, and they worked with Twitter, and as I understand, they got that tweet down in about 2 minutes. But the analysis that was done after that event showed that within those few minutes that the tweet was up, basically billions of dollars changed hands. We had something very similar happen that same year in Australia, where Whitehaven Coal lost $315 million off the share price before anyone could work out what was going on. And what was going on, and this has been in the news just lately, is that an activist had gone online onto Twitter. He'd posted a fake press release from the ANZ, pretending to be the ANZ, saying they were withdrawing funding from a Whitehaven Coal project, and the share market reacted. So, are social media platforms about entertainment for kids? I'd be suggesting that when a tweet can cause the share price to plummet, it's a very serious business issue that we need to be addressing at the highest levels, at the board levels, in my view, although not everyone would agree with that. And there are now rules in place for those who are with listed companies. The ASX updated its guidance in 2013 to say that listed companies have to monitor social media in a nutshell to ensure that the market trades fully informed. But even if you're not a listed company, if you look at some of the decisions coming out of regulators like the ACCC, you'll see a very similar theme. You're responsible for what's on your social media platforms, you're a publisher, and you need to make sure, for example, if you're getting reviews, we've seen this with a few retail companies lately, if a review is inaccurate, you've got 24 hours to bring it down. So like it or don't like it, it's massive, it's impacting business, it's absolutely got to be part of your future business DNA. All right, I want to talk very quickly about developing what I call a social media mindset. Because one of the problems for businesses is that we're busy. We're all busy. We're trying to serve our customers, develop our growth strategies, be with one another, think about the future. And a very legitimate concern for people is, I don't have time. There's this overwhelming world. There are 100 platforms. How do I know what's right for me? What if I make a mistake? Which one is going to be more worth the other? All these things are very, very simple to make decisions about once you've got some information. But it is important to develop a social media mindset because we're living in a social media world. So if you think about some of the things that constituted best practice 20 years ago would pretty much be worst practice now. But the business principle that underpinned the way we did business remains the same. So let me just explain what I mean by that. Companies who have a competitive edge often have great business intelligence, and they use that to set great strategy. So a good business, you often heard before an initiative was funded, show me the data. That's actually a really good business principle. The problem is when social media emerged, as I said, we didn't have that data. For one thing, nobody knew what a phenomenon it would become. But in the beginning, we were just out there chatting with one another. So nobody was measuring what those chats were worth. Unfortunately, during that time, this really powerful but inaccurate narrative took hold. And that is like people like you and I thought that social media was where kids went to watch quirky videos and gossip. And as the data started to emerge, unfortunately, the myths remained entrenched. And that's why I think education around the myths is so important right now. So what I would say to business owners is, yes, that business principle of needing good data is still important, but what we need to do is go back and revisit the data now, and also look at data differently. As I said, that longer piece around ROI and relationship, we have to be a bit flexible sometime and say, well, we can't measure everything, but we can see it's important, so let's give it a go. Likewise, 20 years ago, if you were giving a prize for brand reputation management best practice, it would have been for those companies who really had their staff on a tight leash. Every sort of piece of communication that went out was tightly scripted, controlled by the media unit. It just doesn't work like that now. People have dual brands. I'm out there as myself and my company, so are all your people. And they're having these conversations regardless. So being a socially savvy company means really having a lot of faith in your people that they will have good professional judgment, no different to what you expect them to have on the phone or in a face-to-face meeting. Allow them to be open and transparent and inject a little bit of personality into their online sharing. So that's what I mean about the mindset change. Those core business principles, we want to manage our brand well, we want to manage our reputation well, those haven't changed. We just need to tweak the tactics a little bit. This can all be done, by the way, whilst managing risk, with good social media policies, with strong education of your staff, of yourselves about what to say, what not to say. Very simple social media etiquette, and it's something you guys already would do intuitively and would do every day. You already know how to manage difficult stakeholders. In fact, when I talk to people who are a bit tech shy and they say they do feel an internet generation behind, the one thing that I like to remind them is that being a digital native, somebody who just intuitively knows how to use technology, doesn't mean that you know how to use that technology for business. And all the years that you have of understanding and developing business strategy, managing complexity, all of that is a skill that's highly relevant in this time and something that you just need to do by bringing that personality online. All right, so I've got a little bit of time still. Yes, great. So what can you do? And I know there are lots of different small businesses here, and what you do is going to depend on who you are. Again, very similar questions to those that Mike was asking. Who are you? Where are you in your growth cycle? Why do you exist? These are going to inform some of the decisions you make about using social media in your business. So service, IP-based business is going to have a very different platform strategy to someone who sells earrings, for example, but the questions are still the same. Where are my customers? What do they want from me? How do they want it from me? What am I going to do to get it to them? And the first important thing, and this is for businesses who are really so strapped for resources that they feel they can't commit to a full social media strategy, you need to find a home on the web. The first home you need to find and buy is your own URL. So my name's Dionne Kasian-Lew and I own DionneKasian-Lew.com. Now, platforms like Facebook and Twitter, we don't own our space on those platforms. We're in relationship with those platforms, but they're third parties. They're what people refer to as outposts. So you can't put all of your eggs in one basket and say do absolutely everything in Facebook, because then you're captive to all the changing terms and conditions as that platform evolves. So you buy your little piece of digital real estate, and you can get it for $12 just by securing your domain name through any of the domain name sellers. Find your home, and then find your social media home. For professionals who are selling IP, management consulting, those sorts of products, a really, really great platform for you is LinkedIn. It's something you already intuitively understand. In Australia, nearly 6 million professionals are signed up to LinkedIn, so they're already there. But as I said at the start, they're not necessarily using it strategically yet. When you get to LinkedIn, there are all sorts of things you can do. You can publish thought leadership content, you can participate in a group, you can curate other people's content. So think about LinkedIn as a home, because enormous conversion happens on LinkedIn. People find new clients. There was a great study that came out by Cogent Research last year, which showed that the most affluent of all investors they're about 90% of them spend a lot of time in social media, and of those, 70% spend that time on LinkedIn. Does it matter? Yes. The research they find there helps them make investment decisions, and I think it was around 70% of them had either changed a portfolio mix or a broker or a financial advisor as a result of information they'd found on LinkedIn. So that is a strong possibility. If you've just got time for one, check out all that LinkedIn has to offer. And that's just my LinkedIn account. If you have a look at the top, that share an update, you'll see that little pen icon. You can go there and publish thought leadership content and actually form a publishing platform without having to go off and start your own blog. Although if you can do your own blog, all the better. Another great hint for small businesses is, I've seen this a lot, is in that rush to be part of digital social. Many small businesses have opened every sort of single social media platform you can find. So they've got a dead Google Plus page and a dead Facebook page, a Twitter account that they visit once a month. And that sends a signal to the market as well, which isn't necessarily what you want them to think about your brand. So again, if you're resource tight, think about some of the pairings that make really good sense for your business. So SlideShare is basically a social network for PowerPoint that you can go on and you can add video, text, photos, and basically anyone can view that presentation anytime. It's absolutely massive. Presentations get millions of views. You can tap into what I call the global brain. There's amazing content on SlideShare. Absolutely intuitive for professionals. We already use PowerPoint like I am today. Owned by LinkedIn, so you can put it on your LinkedIn profile. If you're a retail brand, you want to think about pairing up things, for example, like Instagram and Facebook. Visual is really, really important, and again, growing all the time. So you don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to know every platform. Understand where your customers are. There is so much information on who's where. And then be very, very targeted in in which platforms you use. That's just the LinkedIn pairing. And then this is the final one, which seems, again, really intuitive, but interestingly, not a lot of people are aware of, and that is to use some scheduling and automation to complement your real engagement. The one thing you don't want to do is become an automatic channel, like you see some of these Twitter accounts that are just posting links to their own content. It's boring, people don't engage with you, they want to have somebody that they can actually say, what did you mean by that, or have you read this piece of information, and that's how you form the relationship. But there are tools, BufferApp is one tool, Sprout Social, Hootsuite, which make really, really good sense for SMEs, because what you can do is you can decide on a Friday, I'm going to read all this content, curate it, and set it through my Buffer app or whatever app you're using so that it comes out every day. It's sort of set and forget, and then the only thing I need to do is check in on the real human engagement, but like having your content publishing schedule. And again, you only need to Google social media automation or social media scheduling to find, a million products that can help you on your way. So don't worry as you step into social media about knowing everything about every platform. Google where are customers who buy earrings, find out about the platform, tailor your strategy, and use everything that's out there to help you have that social presence, develop that digital footprint, and really be a part of this tsunami that's coming over the hill. And I just want to close by saying that the one thing I experience a lot when I'm talking to successful business people like yourselves is people will often say to me, well, I'm successful or I'm doing okay and my mate's doing okay and we're not in social media. And often that's very true, but it's not going to be true for long because, as I've said, social media is more than 12 years old. And we're at a point right now, a tipping point, where when you look at the billion new consumers who are currently coming onto the market as we speak, they have never ever lived in a world without social media. They are a social first generation, and they will expect to find you there, not because you're savvy or sophisticated or edgy, but in the same way as I would expect right now to go to a shop and find a front door and inventory on the shelves. And that's going to be their expectation of you. And to remain competitive, you need to position yourself to be able to respond. So that's my talk today. Thank you, guys.